and welcome to The Perspective. I'm your host Rafae Khawaja, and in today's show we'll be deliberating on, of course, the country's overall political situation, and in depth we'll be talking about the government's and PTI's talks. Of course, today the DG Ispr, Lieutenant General Ahmed Sharif Chaudhry, addressed a media briefing regarding accountability for the 9th of May unrest. He confirmed that those responsible for the vandalism, violence and, of course, chaos on 9th of May will face justice. He also stated that though politics is above the national interest, and also welcomed dialogue amongst the political factions to resolve the differences. If we talk about the 9th of May proceedings, regarding the 9th of May cases, the Field General Court Martial sentenced 85 protesters involved in violence, vandalism and attack on the state institutions. Of course, with regards to these sentences that were carried out, initially 25 of those nominated in these cases were sentenced, and following the second phase, 60 more were sentenced, which included a notable conviction of the nephew of the founder PTI, Hassan Niazi himself. The DG Ispr's press briefing, in a summary, it talked about the military's commitment to accountability and maintaining law and order in the country. Meanwhile, we've also witnessed that negotiations are being held between the Treasury and the opposition benches. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, earlier in the National Assembly, he offered an olive branch to, of course, one of the opposition leaders, Umar Ayub. However, we saw no change of face by the PTI, and we saw that PTI continued with its politics of agitation, its street protests, and whenever there was a foreign dignitary coming into the country, whenever Pakistan is hosting any international summit or international event, we saw there was a protest call given by the PTI to disrupt this. And of course, in regards to that, we also saw the government was making a lot of efforts for revitalization of the national economy, which have been successful as well. And there's praise from different quarters, such as all the international organization praising the government's prudent economic policies and how the inflation rate has also reduced. And of course, the stock market performing exceptionally well. And of course, the monetary policy rate also coming down, Pakistan's credit ratings increasing. These are all the economic indicators that point towards the government's prudent policies and how these policies are bearing fruit for the country as well. But instead of seriously pursuing these negotiations, the PTI is giving calls, of course, for protests still yet. And there's a new call given by the PTI regarding civil disobedience, which makes the dialogue process very challenging. Factions within the PTI, they also make the party's own policies complicated, giving rise to confusion within the party workers. We'll be deliberating on all the different aspects regarding the talks that are being held between the Treasury and opposition benches, and of course the presser by the DG Ispr. In the studios, we have been joined by political analyst Daniyal, sheikh. Along with that, on Skype, we have been joined by Barrister Safi Ghauri, who is a political and legal expert, and we've also been joined by Ali Rashid, who is the Sindh government spokesperson. Starting off from the studios, I'll come towards Mr. Daniyal. Considering PTI's politics of agitation, of course, it is not only hurting national interests, but the party itself, as we've seen the politics they've been pursuing for the past year or so. How do you comment on that?
Well, you see, I personally feel that now actually the only logical conclusion to such politics, see, there's a limit to how much you can fight with the state. Even if you compare them with the Ferrari movement in Balochistan and other banned outfits who've been fighting the state, eventually at some point they realize they have to come back into the mainstream. They need to be part of the dialogue process. They need to be part of the... So I feel that now, especially the senior element within the party has realized that this politics of confrontation is getting them nowhere. They have besieged the capital countless times. They have tried other such destructive tactics. They're not getting them anywhere. So now they realize that they have to take the same course as the other political parties if they want to play a role in the country. And secondly, I also feel that they're under a lot of pressure for their poor performance in the province that they're governing in KPK, especially with the current situation of insurgency and terrorism. They're facing a lot of backlash for not being able to manage and control things. Like if you look at the home district of the Chief Minister, it's the law and order situation is horrible. Then if you look at Kuram and other parts of KPK. So now I feel that they also feel that it's high time that they start taking responsibility and they act a bit more responsible. So there's definitely a shift in their way of politics let's hope in the coming days we see some improvement. Like this, there's a famous saying, politics is the art of possibility. So what seemed impossible some time ago because there was no negotiation, they were talking about a final call. But now they've realized that such politics will get them nowhere, because it's not the government that they're giving tough time, it's basically the state. So regardless of whoever is in the government, the state has to stay, and the state has to maintain its writ, and law and order is part of its writ, regardless of whichever political party is in power. So there's definitely a shift in their way of thinking, and I hope that it continues. And once the process of dialogue starts, at least you start seeing some ice breaking, or you start seeing some rationality. So once you start seeing rationality, I am optimistic that in the coming days we will see improvement. But as far as if this is for if they're doing this to get some sort of a relief for the incarcerated leader, which might be their one of the thought behind, I don't think the government is in a position, because most of their cases and everything gets before the judiciary, so that they'll still have to face. But still, I do hope that this agitation, which has caused the country a lot of economic losses, it will stop.
It will stop, definitely, and it should stop, of course, keeping in line the national interest. Coming towards Mohammad Ali Rashid, of course, the DG Ispr in his presser today, he said no politics is above a national interest. Of course, we know today marks the anniversary of Benazir Bhutto Shaheed as well, the person who is a symbol of democracy in the country, and of course who upheld the national interest. In line with that, politics above national interest, it should be shunned at every level and every cost. Of course, we are from this country, we belong from this country, and our existence is in line with this country. What would you say about that?
You're absolutely right. I think politics cannot be above national interest, because if you have a country, then only you have, political parties and everything else. If you'll sacrifice your country for that, then there will be nothing, no political parties, no governments, nothing. So obviously we can't do anything to harm that. That being said, I think I watched the presser of the DGISPR, and he made sense. He said, look, the army doesn't support any political party, but the army has to work with any government which comes, and that government has to be of some political parties. Hence, we engage with the parties and we work, because we have to work. We all have to be on the same page to move forward. And he also said that just because somebody wants to be a leader or wants to be in power, you can't sacrifice the sanctity of the country and the national interest. And the kind of statements which are coming from the US, etc., etc., I think right now, Bilawal Bhutto, Zardari Sahab also said the same thing. He said, look, why are the people who are against Pakistan's nuclear program or the missile program are the same people who are talking about Imran Khan? Is it really about Imran Khan, or is it some kind of conspiracy where they're using Imran Khan as an excuse to maybe tow some other agenda? So this is something very sensitive and something we should all think about. It's thought-provoking. So that being said, I feel that at least we have gotten PTI on the table to talk, which I feel in itself is an achievement, because previously you've seen, there was no logic or any no sense or no rhyme or reason or season of what PTI does, or you can't reason with them. But finally, after the protests they've done, all the harm they've done.
But Ali, do you think these talks are going to be fruitful, considering PTI's, of course, behaviors as of yet? Of course, they've had their demands and they've put on their demands, and they've said that until their demands are met, they'll give out a call for civil disobedience. Of course, we know that the country is on the trajectory to progress, and giving such calls at this time will definitely hurt the national interest.
Absolutely. You see now, who can explain this to PTI? I mean, this is something which they should understand. I mean, look at the economy. Finally, we were on the brink of bankruptcy, and finally we were derailed and we're getting back on track. The stock market is performing, the inflation is under control. Interest rates have been cut. Things are, the common person, common man is getting relief. So things are going towards, things are much better than before. But if to answer your question, if I feel the talks will go forward and will be fruitful, I'll be very, I'm hoping so. I want, for the sake of the country, for the sake of the people of this country, for the public, I hope that the talks are successful. I think both the sides, the government would never want to derail the progress they've made. They don't want to spoil whatever they've done so far, because it goes to show that this government is in a good position to deliver. Similarly, PTI, I think, has exhausted all its options, and now they are on the receiving end because they don't have much option. They've protested, they've done everything they can, and they have made the sort of May 9th hanging also. So I think they will want to, be part of national agenda and just move forward now. I think, get over things and start over fresh.
Well, we hope senior voices prevail, and of course they pay heed to, of course, their own well-being as well. Barrister Safi, since you're a political and legal expert, considering the politics PTI has pursued over the past year or more, I'd like your comment, of course, on this politics of agitation, how it is hurting, of course, the national interest. And secondly, of course, we know there's sentences being awarded to those involved in the 9th of May cases. The DG Ispr has also made a statement and said accountability. He emphasized accountability and how there needs to be a law and order, and this writ of the state needs to be maintained. Setting precedents, of course, the 9th of May cases, then the 9th of May sentencing. How crucial do you think in these times when there's so much political polarization, when there's so much siege, of course, time and time again being done on the federal capital, and of course there's so much street protest going on by one particular party?
Right. So I'll talk about what Daniyal just said a little while ago. And I think what we need to understand is that PTI's demands are demands, obviously, that they can put forward. There's nothing that prohibits them from saying whatever they want to. But the reality is that the government cannot fulfill those demands because their demands are not through the government. Their demands are actually through the judiciary. Let's look at what their demands are. Their first demand is release of all prisoners who are currently in jail. Now, these are people who have been charged with under a legal system, and now the government cannot do anything about it.
But of course, as you also mentioned, that these demands, they're not relating to the executive, but to the judiciary. Do you think when a party talks about getting their demands met like this, it should be termed more as an NRO rather than their demands?
No, absolutely. So what can the government do? The government can do only two things. Firstly, the government can grant them an NRO, like you just correctly mentioned. That's one thing that can happen. Pass a new law that says that all previous crimes by a political party have been forgiven. But this is something that the PTI cannot directly ask for, because PTI itself propelled to popularity by going against the famous NRO of President Musharraf. That's how PTI came into prominence to begin with, by constantly talking about the NRO and talking about how NROs are the real reason why countries fall down and why there is corruption and all of that. So there's that. And then the second thing that can happen is a presidential pardon. So now, once again, what they want is that President Zardari, using his presidential powers, should somehow forgive Imran Khan. Once again, both of these things are setting extremely dangerous precedents, because if we start giving presidential pardons, if we start giving NROs, then the nation will never recover. Then every party will know that they can strong arm the government into giving pardons, into giving some sort of NROs, into giving some sort of concessions that are beyond its constitution and beyond its laws. So one thing is extremely, very, very clear to me. It's perfectly obvious, and it's perfectly clear to me that the demands by PTI cannot be fulfilled by the government. It's not because the government does not want to fulfill them. It's because the government cannot fulfill them. They do not have the powers to fulfill them. Even the second demand is that there should be a judicial inquiry into the May 9th incident. Can the government do the judicial inquiry? It is for the courts to do judicial inquiry. So essentially, what PTI is saying is that all of their protests are against the courts. They want the courts to exercise their powers to release their prisoners. They want the courts to conduct a judicial inquiry. They want the courts to release Imran Khan and expedite whatever cases that are going on against him. And the government has absolutely no role in that. I am perpetually surprised by the fact that the courts do not say anything about this. All of these demands, all of these accusations are against the courts. the court should step up, and the Chief Justice of Pakistan should give a formal statement stating that these are cases that are taking place in the court. They will take their own time, and there's nothing that can be done. Now, that said, there is something that I want to say that the government still can do. There were a lot of people who were arrested under the MPO, the Maintenance of Public Order Act, and those are the people who the government can release. So the government does have the authority to release some. These will not include Imran Khan. These will not include some of the key PTI leaders. These will not include people who were involved in May 9th. But these will include many other, because there are roughly, according to PTI, 5,000 political prisoners. So maybe a couple of thousands can be released who were arrested under the MPO. I'm not certain what the real number is, but that is something that the government can possibly do, and that can come as some sort of a reprieve for the PTI government. But at the end of the day, Faisal, we need to also understand that the reason why PTI is doing all of this is because PTI is desperate right now. The KP government is the worst performing government in Pakistan. We know that it has only 28 days of reserve money left. The civil servants in KPK have not been paid for a very long time. It is on the verge of bankruptcy. On top of the bankruptcy issues, it is also currently experiencing a huge surge in terrorism. Once again, this terrorism is partly because of Taliban across the border, but also partly because the government itself is unable to rein in any public order. And we've seen only recently that a whole crew of 13 Jawans died in a terrible attack by terrorists. So KPK is suffering on a daily basis. The people of KPK are suffering on a daily basis. And for PTI, instead of addressing the issues that they have at home, they find it a much better excuse to start blaming the government for everything. To say that, oh, if Imran Khan were to come out of jail, then he would rescue KPK. He would then start paying the government servants in KPK. He would then take care of the terrorism in KPK. This is the kind of what do I say? This is the kind of snake oil that they feed their own people. And unfortunately, it has worked for a very long time. But as you yourself very correctly pointed out a little while ago, that Pakistan is on an upward trajectory. There is nothing that can stop Pakistan now. The dollar has been stable for more than 1.5 years now. The inflation rate has come down to 4%. Every single economic indicator shows that we have become a successful nation. And on top of that, we are having these amazing relations with other countries, Saudi Arabia, China, big people visiting. We have had the SCO conference that was held here in Islamabad. So because of all of these things now, I believe that PTI is losing further ground.
Well, definitely. PTI should, of course, rethink its own policies. Coming towards Daniyal Sheikh, of course, Daniyal, me being a student of law, myself and Barrister Safi, we both would agree to, of course, being subservient to the law of the land, that, of course, the land we belong to. When we talk about the politics that PTI has pursued over the year and more so, it has done a lot of politics over the laws of the land themselves, throwing the country into constitutional crises with their political narratives and, of course, burdening the courts as well. What in your opinion should be said about such kind of politics when we know we burden the judiciary, when we burden the executive and the judiciary and the pillars of the state, and of course create a quagmire and try to create a quagmire in the functioning of the state itself?
Well, as you just mentioned, you're both students of law. See, law is nothing more than common sense. So common sense basically says that trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is insanity. And this is what they've been doing, and it's been almost a decade now but their agitation has, it's been at least 10 years that they're trying politics of agitation. Like I said earlier, the only logical conclusion of any fight with the state, ultimately it has to they have to come on the table, they have to negotiate, because tearing apart or bringing down the state is not going to help them. After all, they are a political party that wants to come into power, and at least they claim to have an agenda of prosperity, which is till date, although they've been in the federal government, they've been in the provincial government, this is their third term, this is their third chief minister, which is unprecedented in the history of KPK. So at this point, I think that it's high time that they realize that they're in a very responsible position, and especially like Safi was just telling us, the current situation in KPK is quite stressful, and it's just it's getting worse day by day. So it's high time that they understand, and you see, once you bring them into dialogue, they will automatically feel. Right now, they're not even willing to come into any kind of an APC regarding this law and order situation in their province, whereas the current situation is now it's so bad that they need assistance from the federal government to restore the law and order in the province. So there's a lot of issues for which they need to have dialogue, they need to sit, they need to discuss to make things move forward. Now if you look at, like Safi said, that they were against NRO in the past, I wouldn't be shocked if now they've taken another U-turn and this is in their mind. And as a student of politics, I think see, there are some sins that are beyond redemption, like attacking the state institutions, but still at some point I think the government will also have to bring them into the mainstream. They will have to show some they'll have to give them some space. I'm not expecting them to go to the extent of forgiving those sins, but at the same time they have to be brought on the table, and they have to be explained that you are responsible for the governance in KPK, and it's high time you people start taking responsibility. See, now this chief minister has been at war with the federal government since the first day he stepped into office. He has I don't think there's a single day in which he sat down and brainstormed and thought about a policy or how he's going to govern the province. So that's and the current situation, it didn't happen overnight. Whether it's the spread of terrorism, whether it's the deteriorating education system in KPK, whether it's the health system, everything is deteriorating because there is no government. So I would like to at least I would like to believe that their current change in stance is that now they want to deliver, they want to take responsibility. And I would also want to believe, because I want to spread some optimism. So I would like to believe that now they feel that this politics of this anti-state politics is getting them nowhere, and they need to change the course. And like Safi just said, there are a lot of people incarcerated in maintenance of public order, so they can be released, and further escalation of this sort can be stopped. And see, and it's also going to help the confidence of the investors, especially foreign investors who are major stakeholders in the development of Pakistan, when they're going to understand that there's, at least from this segment or this political party, there's not going to be further agitation, then the government can better focus on CPAC.
So a framework needs to be developed.
A framework definitely needs to be developed, and more than that, for this the threats that they give, the economic implications are quite
great.
Quite
definitely. Great. I'd like comment from Muhammad Ali Rashid as well. Sir, some sins beyond redemption. But of course, politics over national interest. We know, of course, the PPP, it considered national interest supreme over its own politics. It signed, of course, a charter of democracy with the PMLN government, with Nawaz Sharif. And of course, we saw it was a charter that was praised by all political parties. Considering the challenges that the country faces today, of course, some sins are beyond redemption, as Daniyal Sheikh mentioned. Of course, there was violence, and of course, those that took part in that violence have now been awarding sentences as well. Considering this politics of agitation that the PTI has been pursuing, and now it is now having a change of ways and a change of heart, do you think a charter of economy and a charter for national security is the need of the hour?
Definitely, I think economy is something which and security is something which we need a long-term plan for, and I think a vision where all the stakeholders, any political party which comes into power, because obviously whoever comes and forms the next government will be one of these parties. So if you get all the parties on board, all the stakeholders on board, and just sit down and make a national policy and an economic charter that no matter what happens, we won't derail the economy. We will have a political perspective, different point of views, which will obviously, even if the regime changes, the government changes, another political party even comes into power, but the national interest, national security, and the economy will be the same, and it'll be a long-term plan for it. Because when there is, you see, if you ask me today, what are the main problems with the Pakistani economy today, is people are not confident. The investors have lost their confidence because they don't feel that there's so much political
Yes, they
uncertainty.
are gaining now.
Stock market, is doing fantastic, but there is one dharna happens and it loses like 3 to 4 thousand points in one day. And a lot of people lose, billions of rupees gets wiped out, and small investors lose their money. So I'm just saying that if people are confident, if the normal citizens of the country are confident that no matter what happens in the political landscape, it's not going to impact the economy, and it's not going to, choke the country to the extent where nothing will be functional, then people will be confident. If you cannot make your citizens confident, the people of Pakistani is confident, how will you get foreign investors to come and invest in Pakistan, which you need desperately right now? So all I'm saying is that Pakistan has a lot of potential. And as we've seen that although all this agitation was going on, the Shanghai Cooperation was happening, but still these people were out. PTI was out on the roads. The external minister of India came, the foreign minister, and they were asking him to come to their dharna and give a speech. I mean, these guys have no sense. But that being said, water under the bridge. Let's move forward. I don't want to be, just talk about the past. I think we should just chalk a policy now, since they're wanting to speak. Let's sit on the table. What happened, happened. Let bygones be bygones, and let's move on.
Definitely a very practical way to, of course, move forward. Barrister Safi, there was another aspect when we talk about the 9th and 10th of May, and it's something that living in these modern times, living in a digital era, we see every day. It's the issue of misinformation and disinformation. And of course, on social media, on the internet, we saw there was a lot of propaganda that was being very aggressively spread against the state institutions. Of course, Pakistan has laws like the PICA in place, but do you think these laws should be made more comprehensive so as to have more accountability and a more transparent accountability mechanism in the country?
I think this goes without saying 100%, because Pakistan has been a victim of more fake news than any other country in the world. We can say that with absolute certainty. This is a fact. I do not say that as my subjective perspective. This is an objective fact. And why we know that this is a fact is because our neighbor India has been publicly announced by the UN, by many international watchdogs, as the world's epicenter for fake news, and its biggest target has been Pakistan. And this is something that Pakistan has given a lot of dossiers in the United Nations on, to many other international organizations, to international newspapers. So it's well covered, and it's a well-known fact that Pakistan has been on the forefront of the fake news and misinformation propaganda globally, not just from India, but from Israel, from many other countries. And I see the impact of all of these things happening now, and there's something that I noticed, and maybe, I don't know, somebody might be watching this program and they'll agree or not, but this is what I wanted to point out. Right now, we have an individual in the US, Richard Grenell, who is actively tweeting pro-PTI things. He's seen things like Hakiki Azadi, pre-Imran Khan. He's even tweeting in Urdu now multiple times a day, like sometimes 6-7 times a day. If you see his Twitter, that's all you see. Now, why is he tweeting? He's tweeting, of course, because he gets a lot of fan following from PTI followers. So they encourage him, and that's why it's this random guy sitting in the US who was once an office holder is actively now tweeting against Pakistan. But while he's tweeting against Pakistan, he's also tweeting against our state institutions. He's actively tweeting against our military. He's actively tweeting against our judiciary. He's actively tweeting against our missile program. He has tweeted about it several times now. I have screenshots of them just for my own personal record, but you can go and see them as well. And whilst all of these things are happening, we see that PTI supporters are encouraging him. They are lauding him, and they are asking him to intervene into Pakistan. Now, is this not treason? I don't understand what treason is if this is not treason. If you are actively asking a foreign country to come into your country, to look into your missile program, to look into your Pakistan, into your defense systems and army, and try and teach them a lesson, as PTI followers are now saying there. So this is what has happened. Because of fake news, our own population is becoming treasonous. And this for me is very alarming. And I say this with a lot of responsibility. I don't want to use the word treason wantonly. I don't want to just say that anybody is committing treason. But I think that if I start actively advocating another army to come into Pakistan and then take over Pakistan's army and then try and change our security systems here, I think that should constitute treason. I think a fair person would say that this is treason, and this is what has happened. So Pakistan really needs to start defending its ideological and digital borders now. There has been a lot of talk about a firewall. Unfortunately, we don't see a firewall. The funny thing here is that Pakistan has been experiencing this firewall controversy for the last 1 year now, but there is no firewall because all of these things are happening, and clearly it's useless if there is a firewall at all. So, I really hope that now Pakistan starts working on it for Pakistan's own survival. This is a matter of survival now because you have your own people who are turned against the state, who are advocating foreign militaries coming in. You have a huge issue of terrorism, of TTP recruitments. You have problems in the BLA. We have countless proscribed organizations working in Pakistan, and on top of that, a major political party that seems to be encouraging them day in and day out. So if Pakistan doesn't act now, I don't think there will be a Pakistan in the future. This is about survival and nothing else, and nothing more.
Definitely about survival. Daniyal Sheikh, from American interference in Pakistani politics to inviting the Indian External Affairs Minister, of course, PTI undermined the country's sovereignty itself. We know that it has a big following on social media. It has a strong presence on social media as well. In these times, of course, in these digital times when social media has a big footprint on how information is propagated, and of course these times also have the issues of misinformation and disinformation, do you think the country needs a more stronger mechanism to hold these people who spread misinformation or disinformation on social media or the internet be held accountable, and a more stringent mechanism be put in place for their accountability?
Before commenting on that, the way I interpret this act itself is it's a measure of extreme desperation. Like I said earlier, they have come to the realization that there's a limit to how much you can fight the state.
Yeah.
It's like you're trying to punch a wall. It's not going to work. No? But having said that, like recently, on a lighter note, there was this video shared on social media. There's this father beating his child, and people asked him, why are you hitting him? And he said, okay, I was sleeping at home and he took my picture and he posted it on social media and said my father got killed in D-Chowk. So this is the level of, but had this just been by common citizens, it would have been understandable. Even very responsible people within the party and office bearers high in the ranks, even they were part of this and are part of this.
That brings me to a question. When we talk about the recent protests at the D-Chowk, we know there's a lot of factions within the party themselves. We saw a lot of different statements coming in. How do you think that's hurting the party itself, their internal, of course, policy and the internal narrative that they give?
I've said earlier in one of these programs, you see, after the conduct of the Chief Minister, the reason why they did not demand a judicial commission, because the first bullet that was fired was from the Chief Minister's guards, so that he can, his workers would give him way so he could escape. So the person exposed the most in that is the Chief Minister, and the Chief Minister after that incident is no different from Humpty Dumpty, who had a great fall, and now all the king's men and all the king's horses cannot put Humpty Dumpty back together. So that's his moral integrity, or that's his position, and he has been exposed. All those lies that he has been, all the fake, the way he was patronizing people and everything has been exposed. He has been proven to be a pure opportunist. All he cares about is to play to the galleries, to somehow secure his position, somehow keep the incarcerated leader engaged. But he has showed no commitment to the people he brought. And look at the level of his shamelessness, that he ran away on the taxpayers' car bought by their money, and he left them. And the next day he had the audacity to say that I was the last man standing. So that itself is probably one of the darkest chapter in the history of this man's politics, as far as the Chief Minister is concerned. And it, even to begin with, even in the past, if you look at his actions, he's probably one of the most irresponsible politician that we have seen. And I'm just beyond amazed, I'm shocked at when I heard his preference as chief minister, because he is capable of creating nothing more than a ruckus, and he's a non-serious person. So having said that, coming back to the question whether the government should further curtail this or not, you see, like I said earlier, if it was coming from the masses, yes, laws would definitely help in curtailing it, but this mindset in not the entire party, there is a senior element. Like for example, in this whole dharna situation, most of the leadership did not give it ownership to it, they weren't even present. So that showed a clear divide within the or even if they showed up, they gave a guest appearance, because you could tell that they do not agree with this sort of politics. But this element, and it's so unfortunate that they are in very responsible positions within the party. So this is something that needs to be discussed with internally before you can expect those laws, or expect, say, once the dialogue starts.
Well, we hope the relevant quarters within the party have listened to you and pay heed to what you're saying.
That's going to happen once they're going to be brought. See, whenever two rational people sit, or whenever two people sit down and debate, so it has to end in a rational conclusion.
Definitely, dialogue is the way forward, and
So
that's how
once the
politics
dialogue happens, it's going to be a way to basically educate them that this sort of politics is not only not getting you anywhere, it's further dividing the country. And see, at this point, the last thing that Pakistan can afford is more ethnic divide, political divide. You know, the federation already, the federating units already feel they feel neglected, especially the smaller provinces when it comes to population. We have other issues. So it's high time, if we want to move forward, if we want to progress, to bring the country together.
Definitely, national consensus, of course. Muhammad Ali Rashid, coming towards you for the concluding remarks, as we're running short on time as well. The way forward, of course, dialogue, but of course, PTI's rigid behavior. How do you see this going forward? Muhammad Ali Rashid, are you with us?
Excuse me? Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
I'm saying, I think we just have to hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I think it's in everybody's interest to be part of the solution, not be part of the problem. And I think I'm not sure how things will unfold, but let's hope for the sake of the country that sanity prevails and all the stakeholders show some flexibility and meet in the middle and resolve their issues. And I'm sure, you know, either when we sit down the table, the attitude should be, you know, either you convince us or either you get convinced. You know, that's how educated people deal with, you know, you have dialogue. That's how political parties work. That's how democracy works. You listen to one person, then you say what you have to say, and then you
art of dialogue. Definitely, I get what you're trying to say, and a point very well made. Barrister Safi, your concluding remarks on how the conversation has shaped up so far.
I feel like the conversation is going well. I am personally quite happy about it, but this needs to be a broader conversation. I think if we are to talk about it, we are going to talk about it from the perspective of grand national dialogue, which means not just the government and PTI, but also all other political parties and all other institutions. The courts need to come in and they need to have some representation here so that they can tell PTI what they can and cannot do. The blame should not be on the government. The military should come in. They should inform PTI about what the security situation is so that maybe they do not understand what the situation is. Other political parties need to come in and state how all of this is harming the political process rather than helping it. And only then can we move forward. And honestly, I think that not only should there be a grand national dialogue, I think it should be televised. So for the whole country to watch and understand what the real problems of Pakistan are.
Gentlemen, it was a pleasure having this conversation with all of you. I'd like to thank all of our guests, Daniyal, sheikh, political analyst, Barrister Safi Ghauri, political and legal expert, and Muhammad Ali Rashid, Sindh government spokesperson. Thank you all for your time and being part of the conversation. With that, we'll wrap up the perspective for today. See you same time tomorrow. Till then, take care.